And now give me a minute. Okay, we're going live. You're on.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming together on such short notice. I want to thank in particular Helena Canego and Khadijah Murray and Jill Moore for their help in helping me think through this meeting and organize it and generally get it together within a 24-hour period. And thank you all for making time during your summer to come together. I would not ask you to do this unless I believed that the situation was dire and in need of your immediate consideration. Before we begin a discussion, I'd like to give you some background information and explain the choices that we can make as a group about conducting our conversation in open or in closed session. There are some portions that if we choose to have them must be closed, but we can make a choice about whether to have those portions of the conversation at all. But first, let me give you the background. On Saturday, I was contacted by someone who was alarmed about a meeting that they had been a part of in which names were being solicited for an interim chancellor. The tenor of the meeting was not if this would be the case, it was when it would be the case. Several of the names being floated were Clayton Summers and John Hood, choices who are non-academics and who would be considered at best controversial choices. I spent the weekend reaching out to a network of advisors outside of this campus, thinking about how best to proceed. On Sunday, I reached out to the provost and chancellor, this was Sunday evening, to ask for a conversation. By that time, they were hearing the same information from different yet similarly situated sources. Today, I have learned that yet another faculty member close to particular trustees heard directly from them that Kevin's performance would be evaluated in coming days. Couple this with a few other facts. None of the chancellor's recommendations for trustee membership were accepted. There is no live stream of the trustees meeting today. They did not ask me, the chair of the employee forum, nor the Graduate and Professional Student Association to speak at today's meeting, as is their custom, saying that they didn't, since they didn't have committee chairs yet, they didn't want updates from us. Last week, 2 of our new trustees were quoted in Policy Watch as desiring an extensive discussion about tenure. That is a lot of smoke, in my estimation, for there to be no fire. It is my strong belief that this is not a time for a leadership change on our campus. In less than a month, we will have students returning. We are in the middle of a search for a provost. Multiple dean searches are coming open in the next several years. Our chancellor is not perfect. There are things that we may have wanted to see or hear him do differently. And yet he is someone we know. Many of us have served with him for many years, and he could not have assumed his post at a more difficult moment. And as I outlined last week in my op-ed in the Daily Tar Heel, he is attempting to lead in a governance structure that severely limits his ability to do so in a way that the faculty can fully support. As I wrote, we cannot be silent or try to work collaboratively with a structure that, at least by all recent appearances, has no meaningful intention of engagement with us. What I would like for us to do today is to consider a resolution in support of the chancellor. The deans have this morning transmitted a letter to the Board of Trustees in support of the chancellor. They have not yet made that letter public, but I do have it in my possession. The UNC Faculty of Color and Indigenous Faculty Group has just made a statement that they are not in support of a leadership change at this moment and call for a respect for faculty voice and governance. Further, the Black Caucus, the Employee Forum, and student groups are meeting or have met to consider and convey support. Outside groups are also mobilizing, and I believe other important constituencies to the university will be making a case for stable leadership. Before we go any further, we have a choice to make. There is confidential personnel information that I can share with you, but those pieces can only be shared in closed session. General comments about opinions about the Chancellor's actions must be discussed in open session. If you do not want the confidential information, this entire meeting may be an open session. Otherwise, a small portion of it will need to be closed. But before we make that choice, I want to let you know that University Council is present, as is our new secretary, Jill Moore, a lawyer in the School of Government. And should you have specific questions about open versus closed discussion, I would invite those questions now. Hopefully, then everyone would have the information they need to decide whether or not to go into closed session for part of our meeting. So I can see that Eric has his hand up with a question. So let's take a few minutes and answer these questions and then make a decision.
Thanks, Mimi. Can I be heard? I'm in a sort of somewhat of a public place. Thank you. And thanks for convening us, Mimi, and for everything you're doing. The question I have is really very preliminary, and that is the confidential information about Kevin?
Well, I'm not sure that that's a question I can even answer.
Well, my reason for asking is that I had always understood the rules about confidentiality of personnel discussions as being within the chain of the personnel system, right? So that anybody who was sort of part of the decision-making about an individual was bound to keep it secret. But if you're not in that chain of command, then your discussion isn't covered. So I'm simply trying to understand whether, for example, this is confidential information about somebody else, or is it confidential information about Kevin? It just seems like it would be helpful to know a little bit more in order to understand the need for confidentiality.
I believe that if we want to have this kind of a discussion, we probably need to go into closed session. Jill, would you agree? Or Kara and Kristen, if you're here?
This is Kara Simmons from the Office of University Counsel. I'm happy to provide legal advice regarding the interpretation of the relevant laws, but in order to do that, I would want to go into closed session to provide my legal advice.
Okay,
Eric, is that
understood.
something you'd like to do?
Certainly. I mean, I absolutely accept Kara's suggestion that even the advice itself would need to be in closed session. So that would be totally fine with me.
Okay. Jill, could you lead us through that, please?
You ready for the
To entertain
request for a motion at this time? Okay. So the chair will entertain a motion to go into closed session to prevent the disclosure of confidential personnel information in accordance with the North Carolina Open Meetings Law, GS 143-318.11, subsections A1 and A6, and the State Human Resources Act, GS 126-24. Do I hear a motion?
Can I just clarify?
moved.
Actually, can I
So
just
moved.
clarify that the reason to go into closed session at this moment is to receive attorney-client privilege advice?
Okay, so we're changing this. We're not going into the closed session for confidential. Should we add that, Kara, or do you want
Yes,
to
I
do
think
that
it should be
instead?
both. I think it should be both
Okay.
confidential personnel information under the State Human Resources Act and attorney-client protected information, which is an exception to the Open Meetings Law.
Okay, I'll restate the motion I'm soliciting. The chair will entertain a motion to go into closed session to prevent the disclosure of confidential personnel information under the State Human Resources Act and to provide privileged information subject to the attorney-client privilege. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, a roll call vote is required for this motion because we're on Zoom. Unless there's an objection, I'm willing to hold the vote by a poll that will record your name and your vote for purposes of the roll call record. Is there any objection to voting by poll? Okay, hearing no objection, I'm going to ask Helena to launch the poll. A vote of yes will be in favor of the motion to go into closed session. A vote of no will be opposed.
I believe everybody who's able to vote has voted, Jill.
Okay, thank you. We'll end the polling. We have 66 in favor and 4 opposed. So the motion passes and we will go into closed session.
So you
We
need
will
to,
all- Go ahead, Helena.
you're going to need to give me a moment to stop the stream and share a
Okay, just let us know when you're ready.
close. Yeah, thank
Take
you.
your time.
This is Ricardo Padilla. Can I please say something?
Yeah, go ahead. We're not in closed session yet.
Thank you. If Kara or Mimi might be able to remind everybody what closed session means and what are the requirements, and just for everybody to have that clear.
We'll talk about, yes, when we come out of this closed session, we'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to think about what's at stake without saying what those things are or are not. But since this is such a precarious time,
think about what's
I
at
think-
stake without and what
so
those
I'm hearing an
are or
echo,
not,
sorry.
but
Somebody's on.
I don't, okay. So I don't know if it's clear or not, but I would like us all to think about why we're here and what's at stake and what we can accomplish together this afternoon with the information that we have and with some clear-eyed thinking ahead about what we think is best for the campus and for the students, our colleagues, and everybody else. So just a call for trying to think about constructive and actionable things that we can take away together this afternoon.
I invited Jim and Pat to join us today as my guests, which is allowed. And I wondered if there were any comments that either Jim or Pat wanted to make.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I don't have any prepared remarks other than, first of all, to thank you, Mimi, for convening this special session. I take your comments at the beginning of the open session seriously. And I am here. I mean, you called me and with regard to my being a co-chair of the Commission on History, Race, and the Way Forward. I'm also a faculty member in the Department of Communication, and I'm also the director of the Institute for the Arts and Humanities. And in each of those roles, I have spent my entire career working towards supporting this institution and faculty governance. And from what you've revealed to us, there is a threat to that shared governance structure. And I would urge this body to act strongly to protect what we know to be the values of this university and to know to be the impact on the state of North Carolina if we were to be further destabilized with any sort of unilateral movement, removing of Chancellor Kevin Guskowitz. Our community is already reeling, not the least of which was the incident that happened over the weekend. I personally felt traumatized by forcing myself to watch that video of individuals coming onto our campus openly threatening Black people. So we're at a moment of crisis and we need whatever measure of stable leadership. We need to keep that in place. And that's all I want to say. Oh, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. And appreciate the opportunity to be here. I mean, just to build a bit on what Pat had to say and some of this conversations. that,
Unmute, please. Unless you're,
can you hear? Yeah. Okay. Some of the things Pat and I were talking about earlier this morning. I mean, two thoughts. One, I think, and this may be kind of tactically important in terms of building the broadest possible movement on campus. I think it is important to distinguish between the person who is in the Chancellor's office at the moment and the office of the Chancellor and the system of governance we have here. I would hope that people who are critical of Kevin personally would see very clearly the threat to this institution, to the way it's governed, to its reputation, and would rally to the cause of putting a stop to what appears to be afoot among the members of the Board of Trustees. And finally, again, just build on something Pat said. Obviously, this creates a great deal of pain and distress for all of us on this campus. But when I think about, particularly as we imagine ourselves speaking to audiences out beyond Chapel Hill, I think it's very important for us to emphasize the potential consequences for the people of the state of North Carolina. I mean, Harry Smith got that in his letter to the president of the Senate. This institution is vital to the welfare of this state. And the kind of change that might come and the consequences that would flow from it, particularly as related to reputational sort of standing and our ability to recruit the best faculty, the best teachers and researchers to this campus, that has real consequences for the education of people's children. It has real consequences for their health. It has real consequences for their economic opportunities and welfare. And I think that's the message I think we need to sort of carry out to a broad public audience who may not be sympathetic to the distress we feel as members of this community. But it just seems to me essential that we convey to that broad public audience what this could mean, not only for Carolina, but in turn for sort of broadly for the people of the state of North Carolina.
thank you, Jim. Are there other comments or discussion points, questions that we want to bring up?
So maybe would it be appropriate for us to suggest a resolution from this body to show support to Chancellor Guskowitz?
That would be an outcome that we could do. We could take an action we could take, and we have. Jill and I tried to draft a little bit of language just to get us started, which of course can be amended and changed if we want to go that direction. But I don't know whether people have more that they want to think about or talk about. I mean, this does need to be, you are elected representatives of all of from your respective departments. And, it's important to make sure that people have their voice heard. Are there things that people want to say? I'm checking in the chat. I see Mark has a hand raised. Mark and Harry, after Mark. And then Allison. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I mean, the option on the table seems to be a resolution in support of Kevin. I guess I have two questions. Three questions. One, it'd be interesting to see if it passes or not in the group. Secondly, if it does pass, what do we think that would actually have a positive or negative impact with the Board of Governors? And then thirdly, are there other options that there might be besides a resolution that might be more effective for the goal we are trying to achieve?
Well, I obviously don't know whether it will pass. That's something I can't know until people vote and until we craft a resolution, perhaps that we can all feel good about. So I think there's some work to do there as a body before we would even be ready to take a vote. In terms of what it would do, I think in the same way that statements made a difference in more recent weeks, I think it begins to build a coalition of support. And I think, certainly other bodies, as I mentioned, the deans and other faculty groups, other staff groups, there are people considering the same thing. And I think if our campus is united with one voice, then people begin to pay attention. And certainly there are many constituencies outside of this campus that stand ready to also offer that support. So that sends a powerful message and that I personally think would be difficult to ignore.
I guess from the other options, are there other things that we could do privately? Because it seems like we seem to have a lot of public battles with the board, which I'm not always sure is an effective way to deal with the Board of Governors. I'm sure others would disagree, but are there other actions that would also make sense to be taken privately? And since it's being taken privately, maybe you can't say, but I guess I would urge us to not just think about public actions, but also private actions that could be more effective.
Well, if they don't invite me to their meetings, I have very little influence in order to talk to them about anything. So I don't know what to say about that, but I think there are probably lots of private actions already going on. Let's see. Harry, you've tried to speak for a while.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for calling this meeting, Mimi, and for your leadership in all this crisis. The questions I'm raising have to do with tactics and trying to weigh what kinds of steps we can take would be most effective. I am in favor of a resolution, but of course we're all undecided about what the wording of that resolution should be. So my question is, and I'm not sure where I'm going to may cross the line. Somebody blow the whistle on me if I'm repeating something I shouldn't repeat. But the question is, are the authorities unanimously critical of our administration, or are they divided? Is our perspective respected or shared by anybody in the chain of command? And is there a way that we can support them if they are, or pull some undecided people in that direction? Or is this kind of a situation where we're outgunned to start with? If we are outgunned, I don't mean being silent, but it would affect my feeling about what we as a group should say.
Well, to some extent, I think that my answer to that would be speculative, although I think it is pretty well-informed speculation. And I do think I do not, while there may be supportive elements here and there, I think they are few and far between.
I was afraid of that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Allison, did you ever get to make your comment? No.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for your service. And this is my very first meeting. So thank you as well for, I don't know, hi. But I was wanting a much more basic question, which is what exactly is the decision-making structure of how the chancellor is or is not replaced? And again, I am new, so forgive me if that is common knowledge to those watching at home and those of us in this meeting.
I don't think it is necessarily common knowledge at all, Allison. And others, if I get something wrong, please correct me. As I understand it, it is the president of the system who makes a decision about who is ultimately the chancellor. Typically, what would happen if there was a just kind of a standard transition in leadership because somebody was retiring or something like that, it would be a similar procedure to what the provost search is looking like right now. There would be a search committee with many different constituencies represented. They would make a recommendation, and then a choice would be made. I would also remind our group, though, that last fall, I believe it was, the system level folks made a change. The BOG made a change that allows them to put in 2 candidates of their choosing to the finalist list that is conveyed, and then the president makes the final choice. So this, really it stacks the deck. This body took a resolution at that time encouraging them not to enact that policy. And so I will leave it there. If I got anything wrong, somebody please jump in. Okay, hooray. Maybe I didn't get it wrong. Eric, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. This is in some respects responsive to Mark's question about, sort of the strategy of public versus private action or communication. I also, like Harry, very much support a public statement. And I wanted to share with everyone one data point, which is that some may know that I was recently, the Board of Governors recently declined without explanation to reappoint me to position as a member of the Board of Governors of the University of North Carolina Press. And in that case, the decision was made to work privately, to reach out privately to the Board of Governors for just a simple request for an explanation of why they had decided not to reappoint me. And in both instances, as to the president and as to the board, they simply didn't respond. They just didn't respond to the query at all. The queries were ignored. So that would tend to suggest to me that the private channels maybe aren't going to be as fruitful as some might hope they would be.
Thanks, Eric. Let's see, do we have any other hands up? Anything in the chat that, okay.
Mimi, I'd like to take this moment to ask people to please remember to identify yourselves and your department when you speak, as we do when we meet in person. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Jill. I should have said that. Sue?
So at the risk of creating yet another meeting, I want to suggest that people who would like to work on writing a resolution, please identify themselves and set a very lean timeline for so doing. The only way we're going to get anything done is by having a small working group and try to get that circulated and out as soon as possible.
I would encourage us, if we could do that today in this group. We do have some language just at least to get us started. I do feel very strongly that time is of the essence.
I agree. I think we all need to walk away from this meeting with something other than, and in addition to our shared concerns, upsets, and wishes.
I agree. Joy, and then Meg.
I think Meg was first.
I mean, I'll take it. So I just want, hi, Meg Zamarodi, School of Nursing. I would like to actually see the drafted resolution and begin conversation based around what you all have begun to draft. And I also would like an and here in the piece that not only can faculty council consider a resolution, but also steps that you would offer Mimi in response to your coalition for Carolina that others might do who are not on faculty council to keep the momentum forward, and what suggestions you might have for that. Thank you.
Okay, maybe I should address that question first about the coalition. Would you like me to do that? Yes. Okay. So
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, so there's been quite a huge response, and I think I think tweeted out at the beginning of the week that I would hopefully be able to get back in touch by the end of this week with more specific information, to sort of who would be structuring something like that, et cetera. But obviously, things have gone awry. So I'm not sure exactly when that will happen. But I think the good news is, and what I was really hoping with that, is that a coalition from outside of the university would begin to come together, and this sort of an effort would be located outside of the university, so that our campus would certainly be contributors and would be represented in some ways, but that this would be an effort by people that really have the personal and perhaps political connections to examine the governance structure and take action on the governance structure in a way that the faculty does not. And so there have been some very well-connected people who have come forward and have contacted me. And I met with one of them this week. And so that is taking shape. So I think what that, and we're talking about, really hundreds and hundreds of people from outside this campus, and at least 100 people on this campus have contacted me. So I'm keeping all of those names and records of people that want to be involved. And then when, something is ready and there's a website to send people to and that sort of thing, then I'll do that just as soon as I can. So that's kind of the answer to that. But we can't, like the faculty, this isn't something that really can be faculty led. It really has to be led by people outside of this campus that care about this place. And there are, I think Sue has written about legislators. There are people like that among this group. So, so that's a really good thing. So I'll leave that there for now, and happy to discuss, and we'll keep people apprised as that develops. The second question, seeing the language. Joy, did you have something else before we maybe move to that?
I was saying exactly the same thing Meg did. So
Okay.
thank you. Time to move to language and then talk about collaborations.
Okay. Is there any objection to putting this up? And I just want to reiterate, it is always easier, at least to me, to get something started versus, or respond to something versus trying to create it out of whole cloth in a meeting like this. So it doesn't mean that we can't change it. Jill, do you feel like we need a motion to adopt it before we change it, or could we just work on it as a working group?
I would prefer that we work on it first before we have a motion to adopt it, because then we'll have to take a lot of motions to amend. So let's work first, and then when we have something that seems to be approaching consensus, entertain a motion to adopt.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. So if everyone would take a minute just to read it and digest it.
Could you make it a little bigger? Thank you.
Whoops, maybe not that big.
Mimi or Jill, could you tell us exactly what is the content of that resolution? I mean, the principles outlined in Faculty Council resolution on hiring of chancellors. What is in that?
It's on our faculty governance webpage under resolutions. If anybody wants to look that up, that's what I'm going to do.
Could you also read it aloud for folks who may be on the phone or for other accessibility purposes?
All right, thanks, Jennifer. That's a good suggestion. Do you want me to read it? Which one do you want me to read? What's up right now, or do you want me to read?
Yeah, what's up on the screen?
Okay,
Right
all right. Resolution affirming confidence in Chancellor Kevin M. Guskowitz. The Faculty Council resolves, we affirm our confidence in Chancellor Kevin M. Guskowitz. We believe that Chancellor Guskowitz acts in good faith with sincere devotion to the university's founding principles. A change in leadership at this time would be deeply destabilizing to the campus, and we strongly oppose it. When a leadership change is necessary, we also reaffirm the principles outlined in Faculty Council Resolution 2021-5, entitled On the Hiring of Chancellors. And that resolution on the Helena has put the link in the chat to the hiring of chancellors resolution, if anybody wants to look at that. That was done in response to the new policy that came into being last fall. Do you want me to read that, Jennifer? I'm going to assume yes, so I'll just read it.
I'm not sure. Honestly, I think sure, why not? Just be safe.
Okay, great. That resolution on the hiring of chancellors, the Faculty Council resolves, we affirm the following principles: that the process by which a chancellor is hired must have significant faculty influence, that a campus-based search committee with strong faculty voice must play the primary role in selecting candidates, that a candidate who is hired must have the search committee's support. Processes and policies that undermine collaborative decision-making at either the institution or system level threaten shared governance and should be revised to promote openness, transparency, fairness, and equity in decision-making in searches for senior leadership positions. These principles of shared governance are essential to the University of North Carolina system's continued excellence, national reputation, and accreditation. Okay, so I see lots of hands. I'm going to bring in folks that haven't spoken first. Tanya?
Thanks, Mimi. Tanya Van Daense, School of Social Work. I guess I wanted to kind of go back to the point that Jim made earlier and has been highlighted in the chat about kind of focusing on the issue of shared governance and kind of distinguishing between the office of the chancellor and the chancellor. And I think there were some suggestions in the chat made by a number of people to really focusing on that piece of it, rather than necessarily centering it on Kevin.
Okay. Beth.
Sorry, am I on mute?
No, you're good.
Okay, sorry, I can't see my mute button for some reason. So my comment was actually quite similar, and I think it is the better part of wisdom to focus this on the process, much more so than the person. And I mean, a fairly simple way to do that would be to just skip that second sentence. And that brings forward the issue of the change in leadership being deeply destabilizing to the campus, and then going right into information of the principles regarding hiring of chancellors, because it is a process that I think I really want to focus on here primarily.
Okay. Harry and then Meg. You're muted, Harry. Harry, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Okay. My point is that the resolution will be widely reported in the press, and therefore, in order to get our message out, I would like us to repeat the language of Resolution 5 from last fall in our resolution, or words to that effect, so that that part of the message will also be reported and spread around the state.
Okay. Thank you. Mary, I was combining Betsy and Meg into one, and you became Mary. So how about Betsy first? I don't think we've heard from you today, and then Meg.
Sure, thanks so much, Mimi. Betsy Olsen from Department of Geography. I would prefer that the message here is more aligned with our concern about the removal of the chancellor or the potential removal of the chancellor without consultation with faculty, staff, students in our greater Carolina community. And so that would mean modification in the first and second sentences, and to take the pressure off from the first and second sentences, which are affirmations, and instead to directly address a shared concern about movement that seems to be potentially undertaken without due course or diligence according to our governance structure.
Okay. And Meg?
I also was going to focus on the shared governance and the collaborative decision-making, and was going to suggest in that second paragraph of when a leadership change is necessary, we also reaffirm the principles of shared governance and collaborative decision-making as outlined in faculty council, to points that were made about making sure that that resolution is highlighted.
Okay. Tanya? Or was
No, hand still up, sorry.
just a
Yep.
remaining hand? Okay, terrific. Jennifer?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we could also simply highlight that maybe it would be deeply destabilizing not only to the campus, but actually to the state of North Carolina and the people that we serve, to kind of highlight again that it's beyond just our campus.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm not seeing more hands at this point, so maybe we can start working with these.
There is a hand up, Jennifer.
Jennifer just spoke, I think. I think that's a remainder hand. And oh,
great.
Okay, Lee, did you? I see you.
Yeah, I did just raise my hand. I agree with the separation of the resolution, but we started out trying to affirm confidence in Kevin, and I personally would not like to see that go away.
So we could perhaps try and do a little of both, maybe keep the first sentence, take out the second sentence, and put in some of these pieces.
And that was my first suggestion, was deleting the second sentence, just because that simply is filling in detail, and to leave the first sentence as a clear declarative and then move on to the process. And I do like some of these other suggestions about some language around shared governance and bringing forward some of the language from the previous resolution in order to accomplish both.
Great. Okay, thanks. So the low-hanging fruit is taking out the second sentence. And so then.
Oops, sorry. Someone helpfully copied the language of that resolution into the chat, and I thought I had copied it, but I did not, but we can pick that up.
I mean, we can simply restate that entire resolution.
We could
put a colon and then just put it after this last bit. Is that low-hanging fruit?
Yeah, if I can figure out how to get it in, it is.
Sue? Mute.
Yeah, I think we should do that for 3 reasons. 1, it will make it easier for that to make it into the press. 2, people who think they know what's in the resolution will have to read it. And 3, it really focuses on the issues of shared governance and not just on the current sitting chancellor. And I think it should be included here to balance things out. I would like to see whatever news outlets pick it up, see what the fundamental principles are in that resolution.
Okay. So that could go here. I don't know whether you can give me access to your screen, Jill. I've got it up. I could paste it.
Okay.
So I have an easy suggestion in that second paragraph. This is Barbara Entwistle, Department of Sociology. So can we say we also reaffirm the principles of shared governance and collaborative decision-making outlined in our resolution, et cetera, because not everybody will read that resolution, as wonderful as it is.
Barbara, would you say to do that in addition to repeating the language of the full language of the resolution here, which is what we were going to do as soon as I could figure out how to cut and paste it?
Well, the language is, it's great, but it's long. And I actually don't know that it will get picked up by the newspapers. I think they're more likely to quote a sentence like this one. So I think it would be great to include that resolution, but it's I don't think the extra description is a negative in this case.
Okay.
Meg suggests also a hyperlink to the resolution to make it easy for people to get to. And I saw Renee, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just need a point of clarification. When I just read that as the way we're working on it, I don't hear that we're saying we have strong support and confidence in Kevin. It feels almost like we're stronger on the fact that we don't want change in the leadership because of what that results in. But it doesn't say, or is that something we're not clear about, is how strong that support is or isn't. It just seems, it just raises that question when I read it. Can somebody provide me some clarity there, or is that just my read of it?
Well, I think at the moment we're sort of playing with it. I mean, do you feel like it should be stronger on that point?
I think we should say what we mean.
I agree with Rumey because in this case, the person who is being attacked is Kevin personally. So I think that strong support should be reflected in our resolution. Stronger support.
So maybe put the second sentence back.
This is Hudson from the School of Nursing. One thing is declaring strong support for his stay. The other thing is the second sentence was saying that we believe he acted in good faith, which I don't know whether we have that information to support that kind of sentence. So it's two different sentences. And the second comment I'd like to make, it's in the second paragraph, the beginning, it says when a leadership change is necessary. So who decides that? And it appears that in this group, we have consensus that is not necessary currently, but different stakeholders may have different perceptions. So I wonder if that very beginning of the sentence needs to be crafted in some other fashion.
Well, let's imagine, let's just do a little hypothetical at the moment, that even if, so let's imagine that whoever outside of the campus decided that a leadership change was necessary. Let's say that there were alums writing, and let's talk about some other chancellor at some other university. At Mimi's university, they decide that a change in the chancellor is necessary, and or the trustees at Mimi's university decide that a change in the chancellor is necessary. So if they do that, do they do that without any consultation? Do they do that without announcing that we're going to make a leadership change? We'd like to get some input from people on what they're looking for. We want to have a search committee, those sorts of pieces of the puzzle. So, I mean, leadership changes become necessary because somebody wants to retire. They become necessary because somebody gets sick. They become necessary because somebody takes another job. They become necessary because a different type of leadership is required. So any of those things could happen. at any time, really. And we want to say that there is a process and and some principles that need to be thought about when and if that happens.
Mimi, I have if I may, I know you've got some hands up, but I have a couple of questions to make sure that I'm capturing what's happening so far and to see what else wants to happen. I was wondering if, related to the most recent discussion, if we could remove when a leadership change is necessary and just leave it as we also reaffirm the principles of shared governance and collaborative decision-making, and then attach the previous resolution as has been suggested. I was wondering if that would be an acceptable way of addressing that issue. And also I wanted to ask if there was a desire to add an adjective or something that, or actually an adverb, to make this affirmation statement stronger. So the first question is whether this could come out. And I'm sorry, you all, but while I am doing this, I cannot see your hands raised, your chats, or other things.
So are all these hands raised to speak, or are these hands raised to say you agree? Why don't we, here's what I would love to do. Could people lower their hands for a moment? And then I'm going to pull up my participant list. And if you could, whoops, I put my hand up. And that is, could people say yes or no? Say yes by raising your hand to Jill's question, and then we could sort of see a consensus of the group quickly.
And to be clear, I asked two questions. So the first one is removing when a leadership change is necessary.
Okay, it looks like you're getting good support for that, Jill. So
let's take that out. And then if there's, I mean, we've already used the strongly elsewhere, so we might want to think of a different word, but we strongly affirm our confidence. And is there, are there any recommendations that are coming through for how to make that a stronger statement of support and confidence in the Chancellor?
We can just say strong support and confidence, both in the title and the first sentence.
Well, the other thing you could do is say, it's instead of strongly impose it, we could say emphatically impose it, and therefore we can strongly support the Chancellor, if that's the worry.
Okay, so strongly to emphatically. All right, so are they?
Also, I may have butchered Jennifer's notion. I know that she's a prettier writer than I am about adding deeply destabilizing to the state and people we serve. So if she has better language, I'll happily accept it.
And the title of the resolution should also read strong support and confidence.
Okay. So the hands up now, are these people that want to make statements, or are your hands still up because you were responding to Jill's questions? Joan has a question, so let's go to Joan.
Joan Krause from the law school. I just want to respond to the question that asked about taking out the language in the first sentence, and or you know, we should mean what we say, and are we not affirming our strong support for Kevin? And I will just say that based on conversations with a lot of people over a variety of places in the university, I don't know that everyone really is in agreement that they strongly support Kevin, as opposed to strongly opposing this effort to try to avoid paying any attention to the faculty voice and ignoring our principles of shared governance. So I think that this will garner more support across the university if it does focus on shared governance and focus on the position, and not on asking people to back Kevin, because there are many people who are, rightly or wrongly, very concerned with some of the things that have happened in the university and very much lay that at Kevin's feet. And to me, you can have misgivings about the way current things have been handled, But what's not negotiable is the point about shared governance and the fact that this is not the way that we go about having these debates, and that faculty have to be able to be free to have these discussions without becoming yet another reason for someone to try to get rid of the chancellor. So to my mind, the language that kind of mutes focusing on Kevin and focuses on shared governance is the one that I think more people across the university will back.
So first of all, I mean, I just want to lay out there, we are the elected, or we're the elected group to represent the faculty. So the people that have to get behind this resolution are the people in this room. It's not necessarily, you know, we are representing what we've heard, and I think that's important, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Joan. And it is us that are making a decision. We're not sending this out for ratification. So I just sort of want to be clear on the process, that there will be a vote from this body, and that doesn't, you know, that is significant. We are not trying to necessarily express the opinion of every faculty member on this campus. It would be impossible with 4,000 people to adequately reflect their nuance, the nuance of their opinions. I do just want to bring in, I'm getting a message from our former chair, Lloyd Kramer, who is advising us to support Kevin as strongly as we possibly can as part of this resolution. So I'm going to throw that into the mix because I personally have a lot of respect for Lloyd. Megan, I don't think we've heard from you today.
I'm Megan Plinge from the Geological Sciences faculty. And I think one thing that might help resolve this is to amend this first sentence to add something to note that as part of our affirmation and strong support, that we were not actually involved with the current situation in which his leadership is being challenged. So I don't think we would have to make an affirmation statement if this was not something that was thrust upon us, right? So I think if we were to add something that said something to the effect of, we affirm our support of Chancellor Guskowitz, and we're, you know, are not interested in, you know, or we're not looking for a change in leadership at this time, or something like that. So I can't word it very well, but I do think that that would be something that would illustrate not only that we have confidence, but why we even have to make a statement about that by saying, like, we were not consulted in the current events.
Okay. I want to bring in, Harry makes a suggestion from in the chat saying support and confidence for the incumbency. Whoops, I lost it. It moved away. For the incumbency of Chancellor Kevin Guskowitz. I don't know whether that helps us at all, getting to a more of a compromise position, and then bring back in Tanya and then Jennifer.
Thanks, Mimi. Tanya Vendanza, School of Social Work again. To Joan's point too, I maybe want to kind of restate what I was trying to state before. Maybe it's the confidence part that I'm having an issue with here. I mean, I think we can state support and strong support. And I think many of the folks, you know, in the chat, Joan, you know, was talking about how if we're representing the folks and our colleagues that we've been elected to represent, I think in good faith, we want to make sure that we're doing that. And I don't know that I could speak confidently that colleagues of mine, you know, would support the statement that it says affirm with confidence. So I think that maybe that's the part. And I think that we could find a different way to state strong support, perhaps without that term confidence.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer, and then Deb.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Larson from the Department of English and Comparative Literature. And my thought on this is I think it's really important to stay as simple and clear as possible. I think anything we say that can have multiple meanings will probably be read the way we don't want it to be. To Eric Muller's point in the chat, this is a public meeting. So anything that
our sort of any disagreement we have or divergence is already aptly recorded, and I'm sure will be that will widely be reported on. I also wanted to say I see a distinct difference in offering support and confidence and not asking for further accountability or being able to express dissent, right? You can have support and confidence in a family member, for example, and not fully believe in or be approving of everything that they do. I mean, I know I feel that way about my children. So I think it's important for us to come out strongly on this if we're going to make a statement, because I think anything that shows any wavering in that, like I said, will be interpreted and will actually do more harm than good. To Harry's amendment, Harry and I have often friendly amended each other's wording, so I'm going to offer. I think the incumbency part confuses me just a little bit, and I think if we're going to offer strong support, that should be clearly and assertively worded in a person himself. Thanks.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Jennifer. I've thought about that a lot through this whole ordeal. and that, the idea is that we are not saying with this resolution that we agree with the Chancellor on any particular set of decisions he has made. And I think as faculty, we have an absolute right to question him, to disagree with him, to give him, different points of view and other counsel than what he's getting from other places. So I think what is happening though is that, or what happens a lot in this structure is that there is so much competing noise that it's very difficult to get those messages through. So, but I don't think that a resolution of this kind at all means that we should not be pressing our Chancellor, pressing him on issues of equity and inclusion, holding his feet to the fire on promises he's made. I would not see this as stopping that kind of voice at all. And calls for that, when people have called for that in the past, never criticize a Chancellor because it gives all these other people ammunition. That is not an argument that means very much to me. The point is that people should expect dissent and disagreement and conversation on a university campus. That's what we do. And so I'll stop there.
Mimi, I know you may have additional hands up, but I added something to pick up an idea that had not yet been captured, which was this idea of movement being undertaken without due course or diligence under our shared governance structure. And that was repeated again in a comment a few moments ago. And so I added something to the second sentence, which made it a little long. So then I separated that into two sentences to see if that captured the idea that folks were looking for.
And that also makes the second paragraph not necessary, I think.
And this is Beth Mayer Davis, Department of Nutrition. I'm a little concerned about the way this reads now, because it almost sounds like we just want a voice in a change in leadership, which may unintentionally suggest that we want a change in leadership and that we want a voice in the change in leadership, right? So I am not comfortable with the way this reads, at this point in time. I do think that we need to speak to shared governance, and I think what we had before did that. Right here, we're conflating two issues. One, our support of Kevin, and two, the voice that we would wish to have if we thought that we really needed a change in the Chancellor role, which I don't think we need now. I think we do not want that now. And what we have here, I think, creates an unintended mixed message. Someone asked, I think in the chat, or maybe it was in conversation, if the strong support could be unanimous support. And I have to wonder that myself. And Mimi, I am just thinking to the comments you made just a moment ago, in which supporting Kevin as chancellor does not mean that each of us would agree with every single decision or approach that he has taken. It wouldn't be reasonable. Reasonable people disagree about all kinds of things all the time. And that's quite different than having confidence in the person in the role of chancellor. And I'm quite sure no matter who's in the role of chancellor, all of us would from time to time, for lots of reasons, disagree with a decision made at one point or another. So I'm looking to make sure that that first sentence is strong as it can be, and also to avoid conflating our support with Kevin from our desire to have a voice should there be a need for a change in the chancellor, which we're not looking for now. And in fact, we say that it would be deeply destabilizing. It's just a bit of a mixed message with the addition of that phrase as it stands now.
What if we simply had this first paragraph as it is right now? Yeah, take that part out. And so after leadership at this time, we'd go directly to would be deeply destabilizing to the state. I mean, that is short, sweet, and clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big fan of short and clear.
Not sweet?
Sweet is good too, yes.
Okay, Beth, you want to jump in?
Beth Morocco from the School of Public Health. I understand the concerns about wanting to not leave room for misinterpretation or criticism. I also believe, first, the title needs to be changed to reflect our concern about the neglect of shared governance and the absence of shared governance. And I do have a concern that we're not honoring or acknowledging some of the deep concern that that many of us have expressed about some of the actions that have been taken and the concerns that we have about that and the harm that has come particularly to our faculty, staff, and students of color. So I just want to be, my concern is that I also don't want this statement to give the perception that we support all these actions that have been taken. I'm trying to think about how to, nuance that, be short and clear, maybe not sweet, but also not leave it open to interpretation that I don't think we could all get behind a statement that might leave the perception that we support some of the actions that have been taken.
Okay, that's a hard place to be.
I know.
Hard.
I know.
Let's see, Deb, you've had your hand up for a while. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So I'm Deb Iketh from the Hussman School of Media and Journalism, and I do want to tell you, Hannah Nicole Jones was scheduled to be, Nicole Hannah Jones was scheduled to be one of our faculty. And for whatever reason, and you all know the reason, she is not a member of our faculty. And whatever you say, I have talked to several alumni, students, and faculty, and some of our faculty colleagues. So whatever I'm going to say now is not my opinion, but the general opinion of some people. And they have expressed concern how our UNC leaders botched it. And I feel that we are sending a very different message if suddenly the faculty get together and say that we have complete confidence in all our leaders and everything is fine and dandy. I don't think it is. So I think we should also provide a context that this resolution is in reaction or in response to media reports or whatever rumors that our chancellor is going to be fired or something like that. Because I think of that, somebody reading a news report away in Montana or whatever place, and they are saying that what UNC just botched it, and now the faculty have gotten together to express complete confidence in our chancellor. Besides that,
I think that's very easily remedied. I think we can certainly put a preamble that explains the context. I think that's a good suggestion.
And also the word about confidence. Several of our faculty colleagues and students have expressed concern about how the UNC leaders have not only handled this situation, think of last summer. So we have to be careful as faculty in terms of expressing our confidence or concern. So I really wanted to urge all of us, and we lost a faculty, and this has created some big efforts. And you can't say that the UNC leaders did all they did, and despite their great efforts, we lost a faculty. So I would really respectfully ask all of us to consider this.
Thanks, Deb. Joy?
I was just going to say, I think going back to the previous point, it's first to keep in mind is this campus has been very vocal that we're not okay with that decision and that it was very complex and who all was involved in it. And we're still sorting out, right, what Kevin's part of was in it, what the BOT's part was and all of that. And we're not going to agree. I hope this campus never says that they agree and let the chancellor do whatever they want to do. I don't think that's what we're saying. So back to the previous comment, we are very vocal. I don't think we would ever be misunderstood anywhere of what we're opposed to by a single resolution. I think we're always very vocal on every decision that's made on this campus and heard very well.
Sue?
Yeah, I think it's possible for us to explain exactly what we're talking about here. And I like the last sentence here, but I think it's important for us to separate out our take out strong support, because I don't think that represents all of our colleagues. And I think that I think confidence might be okay. And that we place more emphasis on the damage a change in leadership would be, not because it's just a change of leadership, but because it's not motivated on the ground in a deliberative, collaborative way. So when we say change in leadership would be deeply destabilizing, we emphatically oppose it. Why? We emphatically oppose it because it does not follow the principles of shared governance, of consultation, and of established means of leadership changes. And leave it at that.
Okay. Jill, did you have a question, or you want to move us in a particular direction, or?
Well, I had put back in, I'd resurrected a sentence from the draft you and I considered yesterday, Mimi, here, just to try see if there was a positive, if there might be a place for it to address some of the concerns that I was hearing about folks wanting to acknowledge that the faculty is not unanimous in support for actions.
Okay, Hudson, you've had your hand up for a while, and maybe people want to read that sentence and mull it over while we're listening to one another.
So I just want to emphasize what Sue just beautifully described, and Megan earlier touched on it. After listening to all this discussion, this is not really about Kevin. And should not be about Kevin. It's about BOT and BOG and whoever else is trying to make those decisions, trying to take those decisions single-handedly without considering the campus constituents and the faculty, students, I mean, you name it. So I actually don't even see the need for Kevin's name to be in that first paragraph, because it's not about the person that is the chancellor. But like James said in the very beginning of the meeting about the office of the chancellor and what that implies to the stability of our campus. And with that, I'm not sure how you do this, but the title of this resolution is actually does not touch on the problem. It's not that we support Kevin. Is the opposite here. We disagree profusely with the actions that have been taken in trying to replace a chancellor.
Well,
and this kind of goes back to the same problem we actually had with some of the letters of Nicole Hannah-Jones, which is pretending that the BOT didn't know the consequence of the actions. In not voting on that case. So we kind of like going around to say, there is a problem instead of straight up saying what the problem is.
Well, I certainly, for my part, I feel like I've very much laid out the problem multiple times in multiple venues. I think that we have to come out in favor, in support of the person in the office right now and say that a change would be destabilizing. And we can say I like Sue's addition that says we oppose it we're opposing it both because it is destabilizing and because it doesn't follow the principles of shared governance. But to not mention the person at all, I think, opens the door to say, for people to argue and say, oh, we can make it completely a stable transition.
I think we can mention it, but the way it's reading now, it reads as it is about Kevin and it's not about the problem. I think it's okay to mention the name, but right now, all these documents is being drafted around the name instead of the name being used in the context of the problem.
Okay, Harry.
Thank you. I have been a fervent critic of Kevin Guskowitz going all the way back to his time as Dean of the college. Oh, and by the way, I'm in Arts and Sciences, Department of History. So I'm not a personal fan, but the question before the state is going to be about Kevin, whether we like it or not. We faculty members love to quibble about process, but the headlines and the 10-second sound bites are going to be about Kevin, whether we want that to so or not. So if we want to make a strong message, don't fire Kevin now, that has to be our first resolution, unless we put a first resolution saying we protest what happened with Nicole Hannah-Jones, and then say we don't want Kevin fired now. And then a third resolution can get into the fine points of procedure. But if we put the whole protest on our love of procedure, people are going to say, why are you quibbling about process? You're getting what you want, aren't you? You're getting rid of Kevin, whom you don't like. So let's go ahead and do that, which we can all agree on, and then we'll talk about other things later. That would be a terrible outcome because the wrong people would be winning the battle. And I hope we will find a way to keep Kevin strongly and clearly in this set of resolutions, not because we have no criticisms of him, but we have criticisms of the people who want to replace
Harry, that's a pretty strong statement.
Like, it can be pretty crazy sometimes. So there you go.
Okay. All right. So I would like us all to take a deep breath for a moment and just read what we have and see where we are, and if we think we're a little bit close or still really far away from something that we could all support, or that many of us could support. Misha, what do you think?
I'm glad you put in that that sentence that had been in your earlier draft about disagreements and so forth. I think that that adds a richness, I think, to the statement that's helpful. Several people in the chat had advocated for including language about destabilizing the UNC system, in addition to, I mean, now it says the state, the people we serve, in addition to the campus, but I wonder if we want to explicitly say that it would be destabilizing to the UNC system.
Okay, Lee?
Thanks. Lee Berkowitz from the Department of Medicine. I'm going to back up what Harry said, and I think this is about Kevin. And what I would suggest is that the language says, during what has been one of the most challenging periods in the university's history, we affirm our confidence in Kevin Guskowitz, and then say we realize that people aren't going to agree with everything, but we think a change, well, that we affirm him. So I would put that first, and then I'm not sure I would get into a change in leadership at that time. We're just saying we want him to remain the chancellor. And I actually think that's a simple, straightforward statement that is important to make. I agree with the governance issues, but that's perhaps another resolution.
Okay. What do people think?
I really agree with that. I think that was well stated and would, I think, help to avoid what I still think is a bit of a mixed message in the wording now. So I appreciate that comment from me.
Okay. Deb, is your hand up to speak, or is that a remainder hand?
To speak, and whenever you have a minute, I can share that.
Please go right ahead.
So I do want to tell you, I think we will always have a situation where we may not agree. As I'm receiving several emails and text message from faculty of color who basically are saying that there is a significant section of the faculty council, and some of them are listening in from the 600 of them who are on the YouTube. And one of them said, I am struck by how much the editors are ignoring the comments that many rank and file faculty do not necessarily have confidence in Kevin, and a statement faithful to the opinions of faculty as a whole should focus on the process. Maybe the statement from the faculty of color should be shared in the council discussion to help rethink the emphasis. It seems Mimi is using her personal opinions to filter the input, and I'm not going to share the name of the author, but I'm sharing. This is not going to be a common agreement. So let us just have a statement, but I do want to share with you the concerns that several faculty of color have shared with me, and I do not see their concerns being respected. And please, it is not my opinion, although I share that opinion. And I think several of us are ignoring it, and several of us are sharing personal opinions and interactions with our chancellor, whom I respect. But there have been certain actions over the years by which suddenly I don't think these faculty members are all after our chancellor, despite all the action that has happened. So I hope you understand what is going on.
Well, I hope I'm not filtered. I mean, yes, I am probably giving my opinions as to what I think would be helpful at this moment, and I stand by them. And the statement from the faculty of color and Indigenous faculty group is out. You sent it out to people, Deb. If people want to read it, or if you want me to read it, I'm happy to do that.
We are already at 2 hours. Let us put it to vote. I'm sure it will be passed. It may not be passed unanimously, and let us get done. As Harry so thoughtfully said, this will be released to the media, and being a media scholar and a faculty member, I feel the media will pick up that the faculty had extreme confidence for our chancellor. Let's get done. The headline is done, but I do wanted to put on record that a majority of our faculty council members are ignoring concerns of the faculty of color. And this is not my opinion. Several people have emailed to me. I just read to you one email. And I think this is where the problem lies. Nicole Hannah-Jones was a person of color, and the treatment she got, and we are kind of perpetuating that and kind of overlooking that. And here we are again saying, well, we have all this confidence. We do not. If we had the confidence, and if these leaders had acted properly, Nicole Hannah-Jones would have been a faculty. She is not. And I would like all of us to understand that. It is not a question of expressing confidence. It's a question of actions. And there were several inactions. And this is, again, our faculty colleagues, our alumni and students have shared that. So let us not worry about little words. This editing by a group is always cumbersome. Let us put it to vote. It may be a split vote, but that's what we want. It cannot be unanimous. I just wanted you all to know that, because obviously there have been at least 18 messages I've received, and I haven't received 18 messages at a faculty council meeting.
Sue?
I would like to remind everyone that it was the Board of Trustees who caused this problem. It may have been not handled in the way we wanted it to be handled, but it was the Board of Trustees who created this crisis. And I also read the statement from the faculty of color earlier, which was a moderate statement of support. So I think it's really important for us to keep our eyes on the prize and on what's most important to us. And as we are all wordsmithing this, try to be very clear about what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to say that the principles of shared governance have not been followed, that we disagree on campus all the time, but we retain confidence in the chancellor. And I would change strong support for either expectation of or demand for shared governance. But I think it's really important to remember where the problem arose. It was from the Board of Trustees. It was not from our administrators.
Are we, okay, so let's go to this first question. Should we separate these resolutions, or should we have a combined resolution that some feel sends a mixed message?
Mimi, may I ask a question? Can we not do both? I'm vaguely recalling some resolutions that are in two parts, but within one resolution, because it's just very easily, if you're popping through resolutions on the website, to pick up one but not another that's related otherwise. So I'm thinking that there could be a compromise position and essentially a single resolution, but that has two clear components.
I suppose we could try and craft that. I think that, it may be that the simpler thing at the 2-hour mark is to either separate. Could we see the resolutions on the screen? I can only see option 1. So
Yeah.
maybe we can try and do that.
I mean, to me, option 2 could be crafted as one, in which
So
the
we
second
further
part is the faculty council further resolves.
Mhm.
With the separate resolutions, this appears to, I'm sorry, the type is so small, but this appears to just sort of drop. It seems like it needs a better closing sentence, but other than that, I think that we could do, and I'm sorry, I didn't see who was speaking. What was just said, the faculty council resolves, the faculty council further resolves. And that, I agree, that would work. But this drops off.
Would we like, is there a, Lee, do you have a hand up? And then at some point, I'm going to have to ask for a motion to adopt one of these things.
Yes, I'll try and be brief. I certainly like option 2, and I'm concerned in option 1 that we don't know at this point if there was a change in leadership that it would not follow the principles of shared governance. We don't know that at this point. And so I like option 2, but I think that we saying it opposes it, that's conjecture on our part at this point. It could be possible that the chancellor could be replaced, which we don't support, but that it might follow all the proper lines of procedure.
So why don't we make option 2 bigger so that everybody can have a quick read? Allison, did you have a comment while we're doing that?
It's actually a question, and I think this was a conversation a couple of us were having in chat, and I wanted to bring it in case people aren't able to keep up with the chat. But I'm curious about the context more generally, and is there a reason to not, and I'm asking this genuinely, a reason to not discuss the longer term context of Board of Governors politicization and overreach? Please be honest, I'm truly asking.
Well, I think from my perspective, my opinion, and I do own it, and that is that, there is an immediate crisis. And I wouldn't, it is July. I have not had a vacation since April when I took this job a year, more than a year ago. And so I would not do this unless I didn't feel like there was an acute crisis. So I would much prefer that a resolution address the acute crisis at the moment. Jill.
Yes, I didn't take my hand down. I have nothing to say. Do you have a question for me?
So I guess the question is now for the group, do we think we could have a meaningful vote on option 2?
Yes.
Okay, let's put do we want to do a show of hands? Oh, I'm not. Okay, I'm seeing lots of hands.
Let me know when you're ready to entertain a motion.
So I'm seeing lots of hands. I just want to give everybody a chance to.
And I see we're losing participants, so we want to make sure we act while we have a quorum.
Okay. I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Okay, so I'd like to state
I move that we adopt resolution 2.
Thank
option
you.
2.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion that's been moved and a motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Will anyone be troubled by me adding the chancellor's name to this? Because I didn't get that done before we went to the motion. I apologize. To the title.
No problem.
This makes it the same as the previous title, I believe.
Okay. Any further discussion before we head to a vote? I see lots of hands. I'm not sure what they mean right now. If you're not wanting to speak, please put your hand down.
Jennifer had a comment in the chat asking if we could add a statement that we support the statement made by the UNC-CH Faculty of Color and Indigenous Faculty Group statement on faculty governance.
Yes,
Separate.
Why don't we do that in the preamble? We'll have a little paragraph that gives the context as someone asked for earlier, so that folks in Montana know what's going on, as Deb said, and then we'll go. George, you haven't spoken. Is your hand up to speak? You're muted, I think, if you want to speak. While you're doing that, okay, so George, you're putting your hand down. A question, Mark says, why wouldn't you add in support for all the other statements, e.g. from the deans? Because not everyone has seen the statement from the deans. It hasn't been made public. So I don't feel like we could do that at this moment. Okay, Harry asked, can we authorize our officers to be an editorial committee to smooth out the prose, include a support for faculty of color statement? Happy to do that. I think Jill would join me in that work. Committing not to change the content in any way.
Well, we can't, I don't think we can change the resolution, but the preamble that you're talking about, we can do that.
Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't look like we have further comments that people want to make. So Jill, will you help us through a vote?
Sure, there was a motion and there was a second already, and we've had our discussion. So this has to be a roll call vote. So I'm going to ask Helena to call the roll. It is in alphabetical order. So if you could be thinking of where your name falls in the alphabet and be prepared to unmute and vote when your name is called, that would be helpful. We begin with Deb Icat, excuse me, Deb. So Helena, if you will call the roll, yes means you support the adoption of this resolution, no means you do not.
Okay, Deb Icat.
Can I just ask a quick point of
a lot of people are not comfortable just voting like this. And if you could please do an online poll, because it creates a burden in terms of it being a public vote. So like we did earlier, this is an important resolution. And I think faculty members and faculty council members need the privacy of their vote and the secrecy. And I feel very strongly that this cannot be a very public vote. If we could do what we did earlier in terms of trying to make it a ballot.
Deb, secret votes are prohibited by the North Carolina Open Meetings Law. The previous poll was not a secret vote. It was a vote that your names and votes were recorded when we voted to go into closed session. We can't do secret votes. We're required to do roll call votes. The previous procedure was a workaround for the sake of expediency, but voting on a resolution, we need to do the roll call.
And I was raising the question, are we voting on is as written without any modifications?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Rumay Alexander from the School of Nursing and a member of the faculty executive.
What about the editorial committee?
My understanding is that we will not change the language of the resolution, but we will write a preamble statement that provides the context and adds support for the statement from the faculty of color.
Thank you.
Okay, we need to go ahead and move forward. So people have the option to vote yes, no, or abstain.
Shall I go ahead?
Yep.
Okay. Deb ICAP.
I abstain.
Jay ICAT.
Yes.
Ramey Alexander.
Yes.
Heidi Unksaurus.
Abstain.
Misha Becker.
Yes.
David Burkhoff.
Abstain.
Lee Berkowitz.
Yes.
Nikki Binns. Jenny Boyd.
Yes.
Wendy Brewster. Kim Brownlee.
Yes.
Christina Birch.
Yes.
Lauren Burke.
Yes.
Mimi Chapman.
Yes.
Anthony Charles.
Yes.
Catherine Clement.
Yes.
Jennifer Coble. Leisha DeHart Davis.
Yes.
Eileen DeVitya. Kimon Devaris. Katrina Donahue. Barbara Entwistle.
Yes.
Sue Estroff.
Yes.
Mary Floyd Wilson. Helene Frederick.
Yes.
Ronit Freeman. Jennifer Gates Foster.
Yes.
Wendell Gilland.
Yes.
Stu Gold.
Yes.
Jennifer Gorowski.
Yes.
Donald Haggis.
Abstain.
Carolyn Halpern.
Yes.
Jan Honig. Sharon P. Holland. Kevin Jaffe. Erica Johnson.
Yes.
Joan Kraus.
Yes.
Latoya Lane.
Abstain.
Jennifer Larson.
Yes.
Cal Lee.
And
George Lensing.
yes.
Hillary Lithgow.
Yes.
Rene Lopez. Alice Ma.
Yes.
Deborah Meyer. Debbie Mayer, sorry.
Yes.
Beth Mayer Davis.
Yes.
Jennifer McEntee.
Yes.
Mark McNeely.
Yes.
Abhi Mehrotra. Kate Menard. Jason Metcalf.
Yes.
Michelle Mayer.
Yes.
Claire Mock.
Yes.
Suchi Mohanty.
Abstain.
Tara Moon.
Yes.
Beth Morocco.
Abstain.
Eric Muller. Jocelyn Neal. Kim Nichols.
Yes.
Betsy Olsen.
Yes.
Ricardo Padilla.
Yes.
Audrey Pettifor. Megan Plenge.
Yes.
Shatra Powell.
Abstain.
Lisa Rahingdale. Joy Renner.
Yes.
Megan Roberts. Austin Rose,
Yes.
Hudson Santos,
Abstain.
Vijay Sathi,
Yes.
Yolanda Scarlett,
Abstain.
Margaret Scary,
Yes.
Allison Schlobum,
Abstain.
Kelly Smith,
Yes.
Ryan Thornburg, Therese Triumph, Vaughn Upshaw,
Yes.
Geeta Vaidyanathan,
Yes.
Tanya Vendanza, Lynn Vernon Fegans,
Yes.
Todd Vision,
Yes.
Ruth von Bernuth,
Yes.
Harry Watson,
Yes.
Joe Williams, Tim Wiltshire,
Yes.
Jenny Womack, Molly Worthen, Kristen Young,
Yes.
and Meg Zamarati.
Yes.
My apologies for butchering anybody's name.
Elena, it also looks like Nikki puts in the chat that she has a vote. Her connection failed.
Oh, thank you. And did she say what her vote is?
She
She said yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Okay, so I don't have the exact numbers, but the motion passes with about 11 abstentions and the rest votes being yes of all present.
Okay. Well, with that, I know this has been a difficult conversation. It's not an easy moment. Again, my thanks to all of you for coming together and for thinking about this and for taking a vote. So that's an important thing to do, as we know. Thank you all. I hope you have a good rest of your summer. And
So, Mimi, we actually need a motion to adjourn, but unless there's an objection, we're going to do that by unanimous consent rather than a roll call. Does anyone object to the motion to adjourn?
I just have a question. What's the timing that we could expect for the preamble to be crafted and for the resolution to be posted and distributed? And I would encourage broad distribution. People don't just randomly take a look at the faculty governance website, particularly not in the middle of summer. So can we address those pragmatic questions briefly, please?
Jill and I will work on the preamble right away. We want this to be out as quickly as possible. So I would imagine we would have that ready and on the website tomorrow. We'll convey it to the Board of Trustees during their meeting, and we'll likewise, use social media channels to put it out. And also, I just want to say, of course, Helena will be involved in that process as well.
And push it out by email to our campus, our university campus?
Sure. Yeah.
By email too, just especially because it's summer. Thank you. That's great. Thanks.
Mimi, I wanted to say that we could use the UNC news services because since this involves the university and our chancellor, UNC news services could help us disseminate it much more quickly because, as you know, they have contacts with all of the media entities in our state and beyond.
Okay.
And I think they can help us.
All right. I'll check into that. Thank you. All right.
I
Jill.
hear no objection to adjournment by unanimous consent.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.